Saturday gathering. Saw a lot of people bowing. Our last Wednesday live stream was why bow, a biased Buddhist response from two bowers or something like that. So Ajahn Kobilo's titling. So yeah, as usual, this is just our chance to come together every week. And if you're joining on Zoom or live stream, it's great to see you. If you're joining us on the YouTube, feel free to click the link in the YouTube video description to join, and you'll see sort of the event listing with the Zoom link if you want to join us on Zoom. Gary, do you have any announcements about St. Mark's and
Yes, there is data box and possible generosity.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. We haven't had any squirrels wander in yet today, so kind of missed the little guy from last week. And just to put out an announcement today is that next Sunday, October 29th, Anagarika Bethany, who is the disciple staying with Aya Ananda Bodhi in Port Townsend, will be having her Pabaja ceremony. So that's her going forth into the role of a seminary or a novice nun. So it means she transfers from wearing white to wearing brown. And it's a pretty special moment, very rare, especially among women and bhikkhus in this day. So just want to invite anyone who's free on Sunday to go there. You can go to Aloka Vihara or Google Aloka Vihara, and you'll see under the little drop-down menu, seminary ordination. I also posted the link to it in Discord and WhatsApp, and we'll send out a newsletter about it. But just really want to encourage people to go there if you feel inclined. Also, there will not be chanting chums today. Miles is not here. Okay, so we can begin with a chant, despite not having chanting chums. Let's do the Buddha's first exclamation and the last instructions. So page 83 and 84 of the Amravati chanting book, 83 and 84. If you're joining us on the YouTube live stream or chat, then there should be a link in the chat. Sorry, YouTube live stream or the Zoom. Andamayam patama buddha basita gatayo banamase aneka jati sangsarang sandavi sang anibisang gaha karang gawe santo dukkha jati puna punang. For many lifetimes in the round of birth, wandering on endlessly, for the builder of this house I searched, how painful is repeated birth. Gaha kara tosi puna gehang nakahasi. Sabate pasuka baga gaha kutang visankatang. Visankara gatang chitang tanhanang kaya achaga. House builder, you've been seen. Another home you will not build. All your rafters have been snapped. Dismantled is your ridgepole. The non-constructing mind has come to craving's end. Page 84, the last instructions. Handamayam pachima oada gatayo banamase. Handadani bhikkhave amantayami wo. Now bhikkhus I declare to you, Vaya Dhamma Sankara changes the nature of conditioned things. Apamadena sampadeta Perfect yourselves, not being negligent. Ayang Tathagatasa Pachimo Acha. These are the Tathagata's final words. So we'll meditate together for 20 or 25 minutes. Sit in a dignified posture with the spine straight and upright. Soften any tension in the forehead, the eyes, the jaw, the belly, and let breathing just find a deepening, natural rhythm. You can smile in the inside of your mouth a little bit. You're welcome to pursue any meditation approach you like, your usual technique or way of sitting, or you can follow these instructions. Bring the attention to the heart area. And bring to mind the quality of forgiveness. Forgive yourself for all the things that you've been recriminating yourself for. Look on the person who did those things in this moment as a different person who knew no better. And see if you can just offer some measure of forgiveness. And if it helps, to imagine inhabiting the gaze of someone you know who cares for you, then grant yourself for your past forgiveness from their perspective, if that helps. Forgive yourself completely as someone, you were someone with dukkha. Bring to mind your parents and extend forgiveness to them, or you can imagine shrinking them and bringing them into your heart, to this space of forgiveness. Just forgive them everything. They're beings with dukkha, suffering. And if it helps to imagine them as a child of 5 years old and on their deathbed, and you can imagine that and holding their hand in each of those phases of life. If you can't quite forgive at this point, then forgive yourself for not being able or ready. It's okay. Bring to mind someone close to you who you care for, but who perhaps you can think of a recent difficult interaction or something that's been a point of friction, and forgive them. Extend complete forgiveness to them as a friend in birth, aging, and death, as a being with dukkha. Forgive them. And you can bring to mind someone who you have a great deal of friction with. And see if you can forgive them too. Completely forgive them. As a being like you, subject to birth, aging, death, dukkha. And you forgive them. And at each of these stages, if you come up against a wall and you can't forgive, or you feel like you can't, instead of criticizing yourself, can you just bring that forgiveness to yourself? You're not there yet. You're being subject to dukkha. You're imperfect. Can you forgive? Can you forgive yourself? And just let this warm glow or this field of forgiveness be kindled. Even just extending it to your reality. Can you forgive your reality for being what it is? And find hidden in that gratitude, forgiveness. And if you can just be with that warm glow of forgiveness, then that's good. Or you can continue to bring to mind those who you want to bring to that field. All those who are subject to dukkha. Can you forgive them? And we'll continue to sit together for some minutes. And in the last few minutes, just extend your heart to all those in this room. May all of them find forgiveness. May they forgive themselves. May they forgive all those in their lives. May they find peace. And dedicate your practice to them. These spiritual friends, Kali and Nimitta. And to all beings, may all beings find forgiveness. Be forgiven. Find peace. May we dedicate our practice to them. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So that's a traditional invitation to a Dhamma talk and homage to the Triple Gem, a way of recollecting the teaching which we owe this practice to. And I find it interesting to lead a forgiveness meditation because when you bring up people's family, you can kind of intuit this collective, whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait a second. And we do have to be kind, knowing what our current capacities are for forgiveness, and to forgive ourselves when we can't meet those standards for ourselves. It's okay. But there's a real power to the Buddha's standard he sets for us, which is a standard that does not validate anger or resentment in any form. There was a BBC special where different religious officials were interviewed about the 7 deadly sins. And each tradition, except for Buddhism, which was represented by the Dalai Lama, said that there was a place for a certain measure of anger, a righteous anger. And the Dalai Lama was clear that in Buddhism, there is not. There's the famous simile of the saw, where the Buddha says, this is in, I think, Majjhima Nikaya 21, people may speak to you with words that are kind or unkind, timely, untimely, gentle, harsh, truthful, untruthful, etc. And in every situation, one should determine we will remain unmoved and not let ill will overcome our minds. We will speak no evil words, but remain abiding with a mind concerned for their welfare out of compassion. And one can nod their head and say, okay, that sounds valid. And then the Buddha goes on and says, even monks, if a band of bandits were to dismember you limb by limb with a 2-handled saw at a crossroads, those among you who gave rise to even a single thought of ill will would not be doing my bidding. So there's the standard. At your next family gathering, keep that standard in mind. But this isn't to say that we can expect ourselves to meet that. That's the domain of the enlightened beings largely. And we have to forgive ourselves for where we're at. And there's an important distinction between repression and suppression. Repression is the unwholesome act of mind that says, I'm not angry, even though you are, and refuses to acknowledge what's there. And shoving it down makes it, in some sense, stronger. Jung said that that which we do not acknowledge becomes our destiny. Suppression we like as Buddhists. Suppression says, okay, I'm angry. I see this. I will not act or speak from this anger. I will not act or speak from this anger. Because in the Buddhist conception, any action undertaken from anger is unwholesome. It has a measure of unwholesomeness in it. And the caveat here is one can do great good and be appropriately firm and decisive and protective and powerful, but one can do so from a state or a place of loving kindness. And action taken from a space of loving kindness is always more meaningful. There's a rule in the monastic discipline where before we admonish another monastic, we have to make sure that we choose the right time, that we speak honestly, that we ask permission and receive permission. And this is the big one, that we speak from a mind of loving kindness. And until we meet these conditions, we don't step into that role of speaking in an admonishing fashion. So you begin to really see the power and the completely different trajectory of a conversation taken in the moment out of reactivity, even a slight measure of anger, versus one where you make yourself wait. You don't speak, and you find in a few hours or a few days or a few years, you have a spaciousness which lets you speak from a genuine place of care. And the conversation is completely different because you really see the other person. This is the power of waiting, of suppressing the doing of action based on kama or based on anger and not creating new kama in that vein. And this is our standard as Buddhists. And even if we can't meet it every time, and note when you're becoming angry at yourself, because that also doesn't really work. But it's helpful to know the standard. It's helpful to bring to mind the Buddha's ethic of forgiveness. There was a king, King Bimbisara, who was one of the Buddha's chief disciple or lay disciples, a stream enterer, which means he'd achieved a measure of awakening, and a wonderful ruler of Rajagaha. And his son, King Ajatasattu, murdered him and committed patricide and took the reins of power. And there's a sutta in the longer length discourses, the second sutta, Digha Nikaya 2, where King Ajatasattu, the patricide, comes to the Buddha and challenges him about the fruits of the holy life, about his path. And after a long discourse, it's worth noting that the Buddha doesn't refuse him. He doesn't say, I'm not going to receive this person. He says, he teaches him Dhamma. And at the end, King Ajatasattu is so moved by the teaching. He says, I've committed a bad action. I've murdered my father, a good man. And the Buddha says, one who acknowledges fault and determines to restrain themselves in the future grows in the discipline of the noble ones. And the forgiveness there and the faith that eventually made King Ajatasattu become a good ruler. And eventually he sponsored the first council of Buddhist monastics gathering to formalize the teaching. And this isn't to say that we don't admonish or draw boundaries. And the Buddha certainly admonished and drew boundaries plenty with his monks. But he also knew a time and a place. There was never a person he thought was beyond redemption. And his openness and care. The famous story of Angulimala, the bandit who murdered, I believe the number in the suttas is 999 people, It's a very round Buddhist number. I'm assuming it's slightly exaggerated, but a lot of people. And the Buddha finds him, and Angulimala in the story chases down the Buddha trying to kill him and just can't catch up because in the suttas, the Buddha is using his psychic powers. And he yells out to the Buddha, "Stop." And the Buddha turns and says, "I have stopped. You should stop." And he teaches him the Dhamma. And Angulimala attains awakening. And then when his karma comes back to him, when the people of the town and the village throw stones at him as a murderer, the Buddha looks at him bleeding and says, "Bear it, Brahmin, bear it. The karma you incur now could have been much worse." And this forgiveness, taking even a murderer, even someone who'd killed so many, and knowing that even they were not beyond the path. Because in this conception, all unwholesome action is undertaken from ignorance, from avidya. We don't understand. We are all subject to dukkha. Father Zosima in the Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky's novel, I've heard it's named one of the best novels of all time. He's this Christian monastic teacher, and he says you should look at all people as children or as patients in a hospital. And if you really can take that to heart and look at those around you, not expecting them to behave like adults. The Buddha said the only people who are actually sane are the arahants. The rest of us are in various states of derangement. So can we look at those around us and just, we're children. We're all trying our best. We're in our little adult clothes. And some of us are sick. And some of us are sick children. And what a sigh of relief if you realize that about those around you. Compassion is the response. There's an interesting term, justice. And Nietzsche, in the genealogy of morals, of morality, speaks, he traces back these terms that sound so noble. And he reveals below the surface how many of them are rooted in these deep primal urges of the human. And justice, he traces back to the desire for revenge and for power. And it's true. That term is held up, but it's not a Buddhist word. There's a place, there's a note in that word. Obviously, we work towards alleviating inequality. Obviously, we work towards holding people accountable. But in the end, it's about healing. And justice carries a note of retribution and revenge and someone getting their comeuppance. And in Buddhist thought, that's taken care of. Karma's doing the work for you. You don't have to worry. But often justice entails great cruelty in the name of good. And in Buddhism, there's no room for ends justifying the means. In Buddhism, because intention is the quintessential element in all karma and action, the means are the ends. The means are the ends. So yes, we work for the betterment of society. We can work to rehabilitate, to heal, to forgive. But justice is not a Buddhist word. And it's interesting how we can trace the unwholesomeness of anger in our own lives with the people we know. We feel its burn. But how hard it is to spot when it's out there in the newspaper. Or maybe we feel we're wise enough to spot the unwholesomeness of polarization and anger towards the more obvious perpetrators of action. But what about the political parties within our own country who don't quite agree with us about that? Are we forgiving to them? The standard is high. And just to note that fixation and how that same impulse towards anger and such can manifest insidiously and constantly and truly darken people's minds when it's projected onto the current events of the day or anything. Rather than that ethic of forgiveness, we watch the righteousness grow. The Buddha speaks about the step, the contemplation one takes towards any unwholesome state in order to let go of it, as the threefold contemplation where one sees the attraction, the drawback, the escape. We often see the drawback of anger, but until we also see the attraction of it, then we can't let go. And the attraction of anger, which the Buddha said, anger with its honeyed tip and poisoned root, is the sense of self. There is nothing virtually so addictive as self-righteous anger. It orients, it gives us power over a world we sometimes feel powerless against. That rearing up internally, it's intoxicating, and that's the attraction. And until we see that attraction, then it will keep rising. The Buddha spoke about three kinds of minds. He said one may have a mind like stone. One angers quickly, and the anger is slow to fade. And this is like words carved into stone, they remain. One can have a mind like sand. One angers quickly, but it is quick to fade. Like words written into sand are blown by the wind and quickly fade. But one should attempt and train to have a mind like water, where words are written and they disappear immediately. One does not get angry, and whatever moment of anger one has fades quickly, immediately. That can be quite a skillful means, actually. If you have a certain phrase coming up in your mind, a repetitive thought, then imagine writing the words on water and watch them disappear. So it's useful to see this and to see just how we fixate. The events of the day are difficult, and they are real, and they are tragic. And there are times to sign petitions and to donate to the correct nonprofits and to stay informed enough. But how many times a day do we have to check our iPhone for that to be the case? And it's also important to zoom out a little bit. We can think these events of the day are utterly unique. There's never been any, this is a moment more brutal than anything we've encountered. Think back to the war of last year. Think back a few more to the other crisis. You move through history, and history was always breaking. And even in the Buddha's time, King Ajatasattu, who I mentioned, after he killed his father, he invaded the Vajrayans. The Buddha's clan and the commentaries was massacred later on in his life, although that may have been later interpolation. Wars, famine, and more. And this doesn't diminish the tragedy of the day, but the wider vision allows us to hold the whole of humanity with compassion in a way that's wholesome, instead of fixating on one thing as a kind of dazzling object of entertainment, of feeding off of it. And you can see that, like when the conversation comes up again in over dinner around something that's going on, and you just hear the kind of concerned clucking, and you know that the feeling from those conversations isn't always just wholesome. There's something else going on. And it's useful to zoom out. And yes, these are real issues. Yes, we should have compassion. But so much else accumulates when we fixate. And there really is a sense where staying informed becomes staying entertained. These things are juicy. That's not good. Imagine the feeding off of this suffering. It's not good. So can you zoom out? And can you be attentive to that line, that distinction in one's mind? And can we think not of justice with the note of retribution, but rather of forgiveness, of healing, of skillful means, not just externally, not just in terms of the political parties of our own world, but in terms of our family, of those close to us, and very importantly, towards ourselves. Forgiveness is the motion of letting go. And that's not an easy motion. The Buddha said, or Ajahn Chah said, that 70% of the practice is knowing you should let go of something and not being able to. Forgiveness is nourished by metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion. And it's grounded in an understanding of conditionality. Maya Angelou said, can you forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it? Can you forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it? Because how could it have been otherwise? We all are doing our best. So to learn to cultivate this ethic of radical forgiveness, and that is the standard of healing. And so often you need a rotating tool belt to get towards that forgiveness. And sometimes that will entail putting things out of your mind for a time. Sometimes you're not ready to forgive yet. And the Buddha said in one of the suttas that it's okay in such a situation to not bring someone to mind. It's okay. So you can do that. Write their name on a piece of paper, tuck it in a drawer, and determine not to think about it for 3 months until you bring out the paper and look at it again. And then if you can approach it with a wholesome mind state, then maybe you're ready to bring them to mind and work with it. There's also the understanding of conditionality, of seeing, because we've all had that experience where we understand someone's childhood or what they're going through at home. And there's a sense of, oh, of course they're like this, of course. If we understood conditionality truly, we could never be angry at anyone. It all makes sense. So much of the chewing over in anger is not understanding how it can be wrong like this. And to realize with conditionality, when you understand the full scope, it all makes sense. Of course it was like this. It doesn't mean we don't change it. It doesn't mean it was good. But there's a sense of the heart being able to accept. And that very much goes for ourselves. What led to these patterns which we fall into again? How are they survival mechanisms? This is where forgiveness hides. And then towards our parents, this is worth holding up. That relationship is sacred in the Buddhist conception. There is mother and father. And all of our parents mess us up in very unique ways. It's inevitable. You've messed your children up, obviously, definitely. And yet the Buddha said you need to be so grateful for what they've given you. He said, the only way you can repay your parents well, what is it? One could hold their parents on their shoulders, carrying them around for 100 years, feeding them with them defecating over their shoulders, and one would still not repay them. Or, but if one teaches them the Dhamma and establishes them in faith, then one has repaid their parents. The Buddha used very graphic images if you haven't picked that up yet. The point's well taken, though. With one's parents, when there's estrangement, when there's a conflict, as a child, obviously you need to establish boundaries when there's genuine damage, when there's genuine not safe situations. But whenever there is that motion or opening to approach the relationship again, to forgive, it is our duty as children to do that. In Thailand, once a year, the children will come up to the parents and wash their hands and bow to them and ask for forgiveness. We owe our parents that always, always, to bow and be willing to be the first to approach our parents. It's just worth holding up because it's forgotten. And obviously, sometimes there is a place for pulling back, for cutting off contact if it's damaging, but just to hold that in mind. So I'll just finish with one sutta which I love that I brought to mind brought to the talks many times, but it's the means of renouncing resentment. The Buddha says one should look at someone who is impure in body but pure in speech as a monk in need of cloth would approach a piece of dirty cloth on the ground and using his feet tear off the dirty from the clean section and pick up just the clean section. So one looks to the good in a person. One should approach one impure in speech, but pure in body, as a man dying of thirst would come to a pond covered in algae, and clearing away the algae would wade in and drink, and then move on. So one clears away the scum and drinks the goodness. One should approach a person impure in body and impure in speech, but with occasional moments of clarity and mindfulness. As a man dying of thirst would come to a hoofprint filled with a little bit of water, and bending their lips down to the water, drink so as not to disturb the silt. So when one comes across a person like that, you don't trigger them, you don't stir the silt, but drink what goodness is there and then move on. It's interesting, in each of these images, the Buddha says, then you move on. You don't have to stay with those people all the time. One should approach someone impure in body, impure in speech, without occasional moments of clarity, and look at them as one would look at a man starving, dying of thirst, sick, wandering over the desert, thinking, may this man not come to misfortune, may he not die, may he be helped. Even so, one should think, may this person be established in goodness, may they not come to misfortune, out of compassion. And one should approach and think of one pure in body, pure in mind, with moments, with clarity and mindfulness, as one would approach an oasis in a cool pool, and wading into the pool, drink, and then lie down on the bank and rest. May you all find such banks. So we have about 7 minutes for Q&A, and then we have a special robe offering ceremony with some community from Australia who might be popping into the Zoom as we speak. But if you have a question or a comment or something to talk about, just raise your hand. We'll bring a mic over to you and say your name and you can ask. And if you're on Zoom, feel free to raise your electronic hand or type something into the chat. Same with YouTube. Sai. Oh, Sai, behind you. That's Job. Oh, good. Never mind. Person on Zoom.
Namo Buddhaya, everyone. I think I'll need the help of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha to correctly form my question because my English is not that very good to form that complicated question. It may seem that it is an easy one, but in fact, it is really profound because it concerns the sharing of merit. So basically, I came to the difficult thing when actually, like what you said before is kind of applies to the topic I'm asking my question about. But at the same time, you're saying about anger and everything. And in fact, you can, as you said, like forgiving someone, right? And just moving along. But then the sharing of merit requires that you actually share merit with those people, right? So in a way that you may not actually feel any ill will, but out of safety, right? You don't want to handle the gun to a person who is ready to murder you or to kill you, right? So Buddha didn't really share the merit with Angulimala in a way that he allowed him to kill him, right? So like he was feeling metta towards him and he wasn't really angry or ill-willed towards Angulimala or anyone else, but he shared merit in a way that he could actually change his ways, right? So like this is what I'm talking about because like I'm reading Paritas, right? And monks were really clever to include the sharing of merit in a kind of like I forgot the word. If you excuse me, I just need to translate it. So like limited portions, right? So you're saying like, may the devas and brahmas and everyone be happy and rejoice in what you did and the words you read, but that's kind of it, right? So like they protect you and that's it. That's good, okay? And then there are gathas, right? Like, okay, I'm sharing merit with this person, with that person, and there is a kind of like level of actually sharing it because as you said, you can be kind of like out of compassion and out of all good qualities say that, okay, may this person not starve to death or die out of thirst and everything. But that's it. You almost like didn't say it in a way that there is like two different states when you're actually with this like, okay, yeah, he's starving and I'm gonna give him some food and everything. And then he kills you because he's like just like that because he's in, like yeah it's not about that he's a bad person but it is just the way he is, right? Or she's or whatever. And yeah, you don't want to do that. So this is the question, how do you actually work with that? Because yeah, I want to share merit genuinely, but I'm ready to do it with those people who I actually feel the first of all ability to share, and then the kind of like I'll be genuine. Because if I'm just saying, oh yeah, I'm gonna share the merit, but I'm not genuine at all, like I'm lying. And as Buddhists, we do what? Like we pay homage to what is worthy of paying homage and saying the truth. And then we're just like, okay, here's the Buddha, we're hiding behind Buddha, but in reality we're not anything close to it. Yeah, so that's the question, how to deal with that.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a big question. So how to share merit or how to conceive of giving goodness to a world and people who sometimes seem very unwholesome, seem bent on harm, and how to do that with wisdom in a way that's effective. You know, the first thing to note is that in every list, including those of the 4 states of loving kindness, there's always a representative of wisdom. And in the Brahma Viharas, the states of loving kindness, equanimity or equipoise is that state. And it's always brought to bear is, you're right, there's certain beings who you can, if saying merit is goodness, basically, we can translate that for everyone, goodness and happiness. So sharing goodness and happiness with people. through our practice and through our actions. And you're right that there are people in our lives we can do that very directly with. You can interact with them, speak about Dhamma with them, or simply share a certain brightness of spirit. But then there's people who are damaging and are really trapped in unwholesome habit patterns. And it's worth noting that it's okay. The Buddha gives permission to not engage with those people in depth. As with many of the Buddhist analogies, you'll notice the ones that ended that suit with that sutta at the end, there's a lot there. The monk who comes across the person impure in body, he doesn't touch the cloth with his hands. He uses his feet. You know, there's a place for keeping distance when you need distance. And one really meaningful thing is to understand that part of anatta, this understanding of not self, is understanding that people are amalgamations of sankhara, largely, of these habits and programs that they run, personality, wholesome, unwholesome, etc. And which programs are you feeding? Which parts of the person are you feeding? Because if you're interacting with someone a friend who loves to gossip or engage in these unwholesome things, and you're just kind of interacting with that or listening, you're supporting and feeding an unwholesome habit pattern, and that won't lead to their welfare or benefit. And it's really okay to pull back. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm hurting this person by not interacting with them, you can understand, you know what, every time I interact with this person, I end up supporting some pattern in them which is genuinely unwholesome. So either I'm going to pull back from that relationship, or I'm going to have it happen on my own turf. You can use a skillful means. For example, if you find that there's a lot of people in your life you no longer connect with as much, or they have certain unwholesome patterns, instead of, say, cutting them all off in a violent way, maybe you just have a large dinner you host at your house once a month, and you invite over all the friends who you're a little bit unsure about, and get it all out of the way in one go. And it's on your turf. You can control the conversation. You can just be in this place of hospitality, and it works. Honestly, it works. Like, you can be strategic. And then there's also a place for noting that some people, just because you're abiding in goodwill does not mean we're naive or don't draw strong boundaries. You just notice the difference between a reaction out of anger and responding from wisdom. And often all the differences is waiting a little bit and noticing the difference in the internal dialogue between kind of Mara's internal voice that says, that wants just to vent your anger. But there's also a really dharmic voice that can come, which can also be very firm and say, it's time to stop this now. So all to say that when we spread merit, quote unquote, what it means is we're, in our meditation, yes, we imagine this and use it as a dedication, but in day-to-day life, it just means, how do we embody goodness and skillfulness? And that's going to entail everything from explicit acts of connection and giving with those we can connect with, to skillful means with those we have to connect with, but maybe we recognize some unwholesome qualities to the relationship, to pulling back completely and just saying, I'm going to spread metta from afar to this person. I'm going to have equanimity, but there's not room for genuine interaction. And the wish for metta doesn't have to be, may this person get what they want, because sometimes they don't want good things. But one can also say, may that person know the happiness of non-greed. May this person know the happiness of non-anger. May this person know the happiness of non-delusion. That much is accessible. So thank you, Matt. Does that help address things a little bit? We do have to move on.
Yeah, kind of, because the main question rose because I really wanted to change some words in Gatha. And I know that basically mantras are mantras and they work with a lot of things like tapas and rajas. And yeah, like they really do work with those inner energies. And it's really a thing. I mean, so I wanted to know if I can, because there is a direct thing in Gathas, which I cannot really, as you said, say, can I change them? So like, can I just disclude those words, like those people? Because yeah, I cannot do that because it'll create in my mind some kind of false understanding of things, of reality. And then in the end, it'll be that I destroy myself and I destroy those people. And like,
I
yeah,
understand,
so
Matthew. I
yeah.
understand. I'm sorry. We do have to move on to the next thing.
Sure.
We have a robe offering. I'm really sorry.
Yep.
But no, your point's well taken. I think we do have to. I think those phrases in metta of may the person know the happiness of non-anger, non-ill will, and non-delusion, that really gets to the heart of it. And you can spread that to everyone without any worry. It's wholesome in every case because that's really what we care about. I'm sorry, we would have more time, but we have to move on. Thank you.
Sadhu. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so Anumotana all, we have a really special moment today. Some of you will know what a paba is. Traditionally, this is called a robe offering ceremony. So in the time of the Buddha, cloth was a lot more expensive. So monastics would just find cast off cloth from corpses or hung in trees and use that as their robes. This is still done some places, rarely. But if people wanted to support monastics, sometimes they would leave the cloth hanging in a tree, and that became a symbol in Thailand. And at the end of every rains retreat, often lay people would gather and offer cloth for the monks to sew robes. And it was a beautiful acknowledgement of community and a celebration of generosity. In the modern era, that has remained and become a symbolic time for the lay community to also give other support. And so, as many know, we are working to create a monastery here. The beauty of this tradition is the monastics don't receive money. We have a steward organization that receives those things for the sake of the future monastery that may be or may not be, if, you know, as the Dharma wills, to personify the Dhamma as the universe comes together. So yeah, everything here is offered freely, but there are chances where people really do come together. And I was in Australia years ago, and a wonderful woman named Pat, who is a practitioner there, connected with me and through Ajahn Sadhguru, who spent time here and offered to really had faith in our project and brought together 30 people from over in Australia and Thailand, all to give in support of Clear Mountain. And this was facilitated by Ajahn Sadhguru. So I just wanted to pass it off to Ajahn Sadhguru and then Pat, who I believe are joining us. And I think many who donated are actually on our Zoom right now, as is Ajahn Kovilo. So Ajahn Sadhguru, are you there? That's a yes, but I think are people able to unmute? Hi, Ajahn Sadhguru, we can't hear you. But that's okay.
Now
we can hear you.
I have been unmuted by the powers that be. Thank you very much.
If everyone can make Anjali to Ajahn Sadhguru, it's good to see you, Ajahn.
Good to see you all. Can you all hear me, obviously?
Yes.
Perfect. Lovely to see everybody in Seattle and all over the world. This is really, really nice. I'm so happy to be up this early in the morning and then doing something this good this early in the morning. I don't usually do anything this good this early. I just usually drink a lot of coffee. So I'm very happy to be up doing something very, very worthwhile in support of Clear Mountain this early in the morning.
Thank you, Ajahn. It's 4:30 over there, for the record. Thank you, Ajahn. And Ajahn Sadhguru, for those who don't know, he's on our board, and he's just an old mentor of mine. And thank you for getting up this early, Ajahn. I hope you had some coffee.
I've had a fair few already. And so as an old mentor of Nisabho, this is the whole reason we're actually doing this today. I'm getting much older now. I'm getting much older. I'm getting fatter. I'm hopefully getting a little bit happier. So in commemoration of me getting a little bit older and fatter and happier, like I'd like to share some of that age, bounty and happiness with you all today. Yom Pat, who we've all known for a long time, has very, very generously got together a lot of people to help out in Clear Mountain, because she asked us, like, we want to do something for you getting older and happier and fatter. And I said, well, just do something for Clear Mountain. I think there's anybody that was there when I was there last year knows that one of the first talks I gave was that I think the most important thing about building a monastery is the community of people that you actually end up building. And also that, it takes a lot of people to do this. So I thought, well, there's some people in Australia, there's some people in Thailand. Let's get these people and help do this. And so with that, Yom Pat is going to offer a papa to Clear Mountain and to make some donations. So if Pat, do you want to jump on and say anything, or should we just hand over? Or
let's have Yom Pat, say something. But first, a big sadhu to Ajahn Sadhara, seeing him after so long. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Pat, are you there? I think we may have to unspotlight Ajahn Sadhara to let Pat jump on. Pat, P-A-T. Pat, can you raise your electronic hand so we know which of the many boxes you are? Oh, and you can unmute yourself. So you could just do that actually and say hello.
Panapon Stephen.
Yeah, Pat, that's me.
Pat.
Good morning, everybody. Over here is 4:50 a.m. in the morning.
Sadhu.
And I'm sorry, I look at the name. Some of the Thai didn't turn up because I think it's too late for them, because just nearly 1 o'clock for them. So they said yes, but I didn't see their name. But anyhow, they're willing to join in, very nice. And so what would you like me to do, Thana Ajahn?
Well, Pat, just I guess say just really briefly why you decided to give to Clear Mountain, perhaps.
I know Thana Ajahn Satro and Thana Ajahn Nisabho for a long time. When I think Thana Ajahn Nisabho only 2 years ordained for 2 years that time in Australia, and he the monk that he did what you call Chudong in Australia, is quite a long way, and he never been staffed. Only when he get to Wollongong, it's a city, small city, but that time he only got homeless woman that give him 1 apple that share between 2 of them, and coffee. I still remember that. And then so the next day I have to go to National Park to meet them, and then they do bindabat so they can get a lot of food, that day. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. Yes.
And then he learned how to do the patimokkha, and then learn how to sew the jiwon. Is that right, Thana Ajahn? Jiwon? Yeah.
Sakati Chai.
Thana Ajahn Satro is his teacher at that time. So, and we did a lot of things together, so it's nice. And I always remember, he always in my mind all the time, and with us, with all the Australian in the, the temple over there. So got connection, and I still listen his Dhamma teaching, Clear Mountain, on Wednesday sometime, and not Saturday too early for me, but Wednesday good time.
Sadhu, Pat, sadhu. Sadhu was Pat was one of the women who would stay up all night with the monks and meditate every Wan Pra, and I think she sat full lotus every morning for about 3 hours. So Pat, it's lovely to have that connection, and so rejoicing in your generosity. So maybe Job will offer in honor and
Yeah,
represent.
excuse me, ท่านอาจารย์ can I introduce some of my friends from Australia? That
Yes,
she
you
in
can.
the in the Zoom as well. Chung Jing, yeah, can you say something? You there, Chung Jing? I saw you.
Good morning ค่ะ
Morning,
นมัส
Jing
การ
Jing.
ค่ะท่านอาจารย์สาธโร and ท่านอาจารย์นิสโพค่ะ Good morning everyone nice to meet you ค่ะ
Children porn.
And another one is Kesini from Australia as well. Hui, where are you? Can you say hello?
สวัสดีค่ะ
Sadhu.
เย้หุย
And
So-
then I think Nook, another one, Nook. You there, Nook?
สวัสดีค่ะ
Children porn.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Sadhu.
I think I didn't miss anybody. I think that's it. I think.
So Pat did bring 30 people all together, and these are the representatives. So Anumotana, all of you for coming and getting up so early for all of us.
Oh, it's worth for it, ท่านอาจารย์
So Pat, we'll have Job offer symbolically now. And does she have a mic?
Excuse me, ท่านอาจารย์ the word for the Papa, we me Jung and Nook and Kesani can do the prayer.
We have yeah, okay. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Kun Job do the.
So maybe if Yom Job leads it, and then
Yeah.
you, Yom
Yes.
Pat, and Yom Jung, and everybody that you follow along as well.
Yeah,
It makes
everybody.
it logistically,
Yeah,
it makes
that's
it a bit easier for everybody there.
Job
Yeah,
can
yeah.
lead, and everyone's
Yeah.
welcome to repeat after Job.
อิมานิมะยังพันเต
อิมานิมะยังพันเต
ปังสกุละจีวรานิ
บางสกุละจีวรานิ
สัปปริวารานิ
สัปปะริวารานิ
ภิกขุสังคัสสะ
ภิกขุสังคัสสะ
โอโยชนะชายามะ
โอโนชยามะ
สาธุโนพันเต
สาธุ
สา
โน
ธุ
พัน
โน
เต
พันเต
ภิกขุสังโฆ
ภิกขุ
ภิก
สั
ขุ
ง
สัง
โฆ
โฆ
อิมานิ
อิมานิ
ปังสกุระจีวรานิ
บางส
ตัง
กุ
ส
ละ
กุ
จีว
รา
รา
จีว
นิ
รานิ
สัปปริวารานิ
สัปปะ
ป
ริ
ริ
วาว
า
รา
รา
นิ
นิ
ปิคันหาตุ
ป
ป
ฏิ
ฏิ
คัน
คั
หาน
หาตุ
อัมหากัง
อัม
อั
หาม
หา
กัง
กัง
ทีคารตัง
ที
ที
คารั
คา
ต
ร
ตัง
กัง
ตายะสุขายะ
อิ
หิ
ตา
ตาย
ะ
ยะ สุขายะ
We present this cast of cloths of ours
present cause of our
represent ขอพระเจ้า
together with these accompanying articles to the Bhikkhu Sanghar. May the Bhikkhu Sanghar accept this cast of cloths together with these accompanying articles for our long-term welfare and happiness. Sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu. And now Job will offer the symbolic cloth and flowers as a symbol. Sadhu. And now Ajahn Kovilo, who is also here, and Ajahn Sadaro and I will just give a acknowledgement or rejoicing in goodness from all the generosity. Ajahn Kovilo, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
All right, maybe we could
Namaskar.
spotlight Ajahn Kovilo. Nimon.
Adasime akasime nyati mita sakachame Vedanan dakinan daja Ube katam anusarang Nahirunang wasoko wa Yawanya paridevana Natam petan amataya Evang ditan dinyatayo Ayanchako dakina dina Sanghami supatitita Digharatam itayasa Tanha so upakapati so nyati dhammo cha ayang nidasito petana puja chakata hulara balancha bhikkунang anupadinang tumhehi punya pasutam anapakante.
Sadhu. So 3 big sadhus for all the gift and generosity. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ajahn Kovilo, would you like to just say any kind of words to the community? You're joining us from California.
Yep. Just say namaskaran to Ajahn Sadaro, namaskaran Ajahn Nisabho. It's good to meet you, Yom Pat, Yom Nup, Yom Kesari, Yom Jung, and everyone who offered from Thailand. Just to introduce all of the Farang, anyone who doesn't yet know Thai, to a very useful Thai word, which is Bok Boon, Bok Boon. You look up Bok Boon in a dictionary, a Thai dictionary, and it might say to solicit, like you're soliciting funds, but it literally means to balk, to tell your friends about the boon, the punya, the merit. And it can be a beautiful custom when you just tell your friends. It's like this spirit of communal generosity or doing something good together. Like you don't just do your charity or whatever good things you want to do by yourself, but you tell all your friends, because that way you multiply all of the goodness and happiness. You multiply the chances for you to be happy because all your friends are doing it with you. So not only do you get all of the merit and virtue and goodness that comes from giving, but you've got all your friends with you and you get to see them smiling. And even if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, still hopefully there's some smiles going on. But just anumotana at Yom tukท่านที่ให้ทานกับเราให้บุญกับเรา. It's really wonderful what you did and very inspiring. I hope it's a custom certainly that I can learn from, is just do good in a communal fashion. So it's good to meet all of you in Thailand, Yom Pat and Anumodana, and good to see everyone there in Seattle as well.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Truly, and I know we're running a bit over time, but just to say, yes, this is really beautiful when seeing people kind of come together and just seeing this community grow over this last 2.5 years. It's been beautiful, and we hope someday soon to have a place where people can gather, come sit and meditate and find dharmic refuge. And in the meantime, there's something quite endearing about being in a gym together. Chipmunks, rogue inside and all, and very touching to have all 30 people from the other side of the Pacific reach out to us. So just an enormous anumodana, and I also hope I can learn from that level of generosity. So sadhu. And Ajahn Sadaro, any final words before you get back to the morning routine?
Any final words? No final words. Again, I when I was growing up, I really didn't think my life would amount to too much. So to be in this kind of situation where there's so many people helping out and being generous and coming together and to support something worthwhile, sort of off the minimal input that I actually did, this is really inspiring for me. So I really do thank so many people for this, and Pat, Jung, all these people that have put in for it. So yeah, I really, hopefully the next time that I'm there, I shall see much more of a community thriving, flourishing, more people. So Nisabho, I'm holding you to that. Next time I'm there, more people have to come and see me.
Sadhu, sadhu, Ajahn Sadaro. Ajahn Sadaro's first encounter with snow, I think, was at the end of one of his alms rounds here, and it just started snowing in the middle of it, and he called me after he got back to the Kut, and he's like, well, it's quite cold. So anyways, come visit us again soon, Ajahn. So let's just have everyone give a big wave to everyone on Zoom, and everyone on Zoom give a big wave back to everyone here, which I guess is just Ajahn Sadhguru, really large, giving a wave because he's the only one spotlighted. All right, there we go. There we go. Anumodana. And as before, wonderful. We have just a potluck as usual after this. For anyone who wants, please have some food, speak to one another. We know that these after gathering social time can be a bit overwhelming for people, and just want to encourage people to, if you just want to designate 3 or so people who you really want to connect with, just spend some time with a conversation with a few people and dive in deep, and don't worry too much about kind of flitting here and there if you don't want to. Just want people to feel comfortable settling in. And a good discussion question, just to seed it, would be something I think like, where do you feel like you want to focus your forgiveness right now? So those who want to bow to the Buddha image can, and those who don't want to don't have to. And everyone from Australia, go back to sleep or get up. All right, everyone wave again. Bye.
Can I say something before you leave?
You
Thank you,
can.
Kun Job, very much for do this for us. ขอบคุณมากนะคะ ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณมากเลย Anumodana Yom. Job says Anumodana. Sadhu
Thank you.
Pat, come and visit us at some point. Okay.